Immigration enforcement accountability. It sounds like a bureaucratic issue, right? But when you hear about US citizens being detained for weeks despite having valid ID and children being separated from parents as official policy, suddenly we're talking about something much darker. The scope of what came out during this trial at The Hague is truly staggering. How did we get to the point where immigration officials are being tried for crimes against humanity?
Well, the evidence presented was overwhelming. Take Maria's case: 23 days in detention despite having a valid passport, driver's license, and social security card. And here's what's truly chilling. The ACLU documented hundreds of similar cases between 2025 and 2029. The systematic nature of these abuses really comes through in Dr. Cho's medical testimony. Those details about untreated infections and pregnant women being denied basic care.
You know what's particularly disturbing? The internal memos that surfaced showing how enforcement metrics were prioritized over humanitarian considerations. They literally had written directives to focus on numbers rather than individual circumstances.
And then there's the economic impact. That single raid in Oxnard caused $42 million in crop damage and $156 million in regional economic losses. The ripple effects were enormous.
Speaking of ripple effects, let's talk about Rumeysa Öztürk's case. Here's a graduate student at Columbia organizing peaceful protests, and suddenly ICE shows up at her visa appointment with printouts of her social media posts. They were clearly targeting political dissent.
That's what makes this verdict so significant. It establishes that these weren't just policy failures or administrative oversights.
Right, and Agent Mendoza's testimony really drove that home. When he described hearing children crying for their parents and seeing US citizens detained despite valid ID, you could tell these weren't just random incidents.
The documentation of conditions in these facilities is hard to believe. Expired food, overcrowded cells, denial of basic hygiene supplies. These were deliberate choices.
And let's not forget the Dallas facility shooting. The prosecution showed how negligent security protocols led to completely preventable deaths. The facility's own reports had flagged these vulnerabilities months earlier.
So what happens now? This verdict is already triggering reforms in immigration agencies worldwide.
Well, the judges were unequivocal in their ruling: unlawful detention of civilians, persecution based on national origin, and deliberate creation of inhumane conditions. Each charge was backed by extensive evidence.
That quote from Maria after the verdict really stays with you, about how the acknowledgement matters, how it proves they weren't crazy or lying.
You know what's powerful about this trial? It's created this comprehensive historical record. Future generations will be able to look back and understand exactly how these abuses occurred and how they were finally addressed.
That image of the child holding the "Never Again" sign outside the courthouse, it really brings everything full circle.
It does. And here's the crucial point: we can't wait for history to judge these actions. The trial established that following orders is not a defense when those orders violate fundamental human rights. We need active oversight and enforcement of humanitarian standards in real time.
Looking at how this evolved from 2025 to 2029, it's clear these systems of abuse don't appear overnight. They develop gradually, through small compromises and ignored warning signs.
And that's exactly why this verdict matters so much. It sets a clear line. No matter what political pressures exist, no matter what policies are in place, there are certain fundamental human rights that cannot be violated in the name of immigration enforcement or national security.